Hello YouTubers, MMA fans, UFC fans, cowboy fans, but most importantly the fighting guru fans. You guys matter the most. Alright guys, thank you for welcome to my show. I'm going to talk to you guys on this segment today about, once again, you know what we believe in here is quality always beats quantity. So if I'm not going to give you the full card because that's reserved for my beloved patrons, they get the full circle colored picks, they get the picks, they get the parlays, they get my color coordination picks which show adversity, high, low, medium for each winning pick I give them. But what I'll do for you guys, since I can't do anything close to that, is I'll give you, just like I did last week with the Farazayams, the fights that most people are troubled between picking the right guy and the wrong guy. And hopefully it'll help you guys avoid some landmines that could have blown up some parlays, and just get you something that's worth a value. At least it's not going to be a minus 1,200 favorite or some huge huge favorite that you can't do nothing with that pick. This one, at least you could do something with it. All right. So today's fight, we're going to talk about. Let me open my handy 2021's notebooks. This is equivalent to what people back in the day used to have to write everything down, and now we're in the new age where everything's electronic. I gotta keep up with the new days with all you youngins. Alright, let me get my I like to see the odds because they change a lot, so I'm going to put it on the page with the breaking odds. Alright. Okay. Today's excuse my allergies. Today's episode is going to be in regards to the Korean Zombie, obviously the Korean Zombie versus Dan Ige, 50K Ige event. That's the main event headliner. But today's segment, we're going to focus on speaking about a underdog pick. Good. I'm glad to see he's still an underdog. I don't think it'll change either. It may, if anything, from what I'm noticing, again, I feel like I did deja vu. I'm saying this again like I did on the Ziam card. From what I'm noticing, everybody seems to be on the other side. Everybody's picking against Wellington Thurman, and they're going with Bruno Silva. So, well, they're going to be more so, if anything, because everybody is picking him on the other channels. So, this is a fight that actually, this whole card, you guys got to be careful. If you're not a professional or if you don't have a very good handicapper, and there's nobody, that I know of, at least not on YouTube, that has fight IQ, that used to be either a fighter or study the arts of different martial arts, or used to train maybe. Unless somebody has that type of IQ, they're gonna have a lot of trouble picking winners on this card, because UFC's matchmakers are very clever. These guys do have fight IQ similar to mine. So what they've done on this card is they've pretty much matched everybody up with their kryptonite, and it goes both ways. So they're not just giving one person a difficult matchup, they're giving the other guy a difficult matchup as well. So they're doing both. They're giving two people who have each other's kryptonite. So it's a dangerous card. You got to be able to go a little bit beyond the normal research that you would have to go through to figure out the right picks. So, I'll just give you some examples. 1 second. Sorry, guys. Okay, so I'll give you one example. There, for example, the Spivak, the Spivak fight. The guy we've seen in his last fight, he's comfortable trying to take the fights to the ground and hold his opponents down onto the floor and on the mat. He likes to try to fight a little bit, but then typically likes to spend more time wrestling and ground and pound and just keeping his opponents on their backs. Then what did they do? They gave him probably one of the most dangerous guys, who's the worst person you want to be tussling with on the ground in their division. They call him the boa constrictor, because when he wraps around you, there's no getting him off. So you have a guy who likes to wrestle and go on the ground against the guy who loves to be on the ground and who wins fights off the ground. But then on the other spectrum, if you're him, if you like to you're used to getting submissions off the ground and you like to try to get the fight, you don't want a good, strong wrestler, a guy who's bigger and stronger than you. And that's what that guy, if you didn't pay attention to the weigh-ins, the size discrepancy was pretty big. So again, both of them have each other's kryptonite. The guy who wants to be on his back is fighting against the guy who can just bully himself out of positions and submissions. So when he grabs his arm, he'll be able to just push it off because he's stronger and bigger. But then the other guy is also going to be playing with fire. So now you got to go to the further next steps. What else can we compare and contrast? And only a sharp fighting mind like mine can do that. So, but we're not talking about that fight now. My patrons will have the pick for that fight, but we'll get into the actual fight we're going to be talking about today. Is, like I said, the Wellington Thurman fight against the guy who's coming off of a TKO loss from Andrew Sanchez. Andrew Sanchez, we'll talk about him in a minute. But yeah, so this is the Thurman and Bruno Silva fight, but not to be confused with the fun-sized Bruno Silva, the guy who was fighting against like Tagir Ulanbov, the guy who's been doing really well. He beat JP Buys. We had him in some nice parlays when he beat JP Buys inside the distance, which was the prop bet I gave. Then not that Bruno Silva. We're talking about the medium-sized Bruno Silva. This is a guy you guys may not be familiar with all too much because when they signed him to the UFC, he had also came out with a dirty negative or positive reading on a performance enhancer test from USADA. So USADA found some tainted supplement or whatever it was. I don't know. He claims he didn't. It wasn't on purpose. He pled not guilty the whole way round. But let me tell you guys this. I did notice a big difference in his muscularity, his mass, his size, and also his confidence. You could see it in his stare downs that he wasn't the usual way he used to be in his older stare downs. He's also not as big as he used to be. And he also is a guy who used to fight like he didn't care about what the judges' scorecards were going to look like. So what I mean by that is that he doesn't fight as if he is trying to accumulate in points and keep the fight close. He fights as if he knows he could be behind on the scorecards and still he intends on getting the win. So he had a lot of confidence in knowing that he's going to get the knockout. And when you're juicing up, when you're on steroids or whatever enhancements that he's on, it gives you that advantage of like, yeah, good, I got an edge on this guy. It gives you that confidence of knowing that your game plan is going to work. And to be honest, watching his fights, it came down to, it could have been either his reputation, it could have been his power that they felt, but for whatever reason, majority of his fights are cans. If you look at his resume, the people he's beaten, the majority of those guys are cans. These are guys who have terrible records, no skills. They usually cover up and don't want to face adversity. As soon as he hits them with something hard, you notice they don't start to defend intelligently. They just ball up into a ball and they try to cover up from getting hit, and so the referee is forced to stop it. So he although he has the power and he's done it, majority of his wins and knockouts are not like one punch knockouts where he's sleeping people. A majority of them were that they were just covering up. And for some reason, even the guys who are slightly higher competition, the guys who are like better records, former champions in M1, like those leagues that are not as impressive, not as high level, but still they're like the leaders of the cans, like the king can, the best cans. You know, those guys who are a little bit higher level than your normal can. He did the same thing with those guys, so that's why his reputation is looking good. But I'll tell you this, those guys didn't fight any different than those cans. And I think they fought different than they've ever fought before. So I guess it's a lot to do with what we're going to talk about in a second, confidence. When they went against those other cans, the baby cans, the little cans instead of the big cans, those guys felt comfortable. They had confidence in knowing they're not fighting anybody dangerous, so they looked good and they built their reputation of being champions and medium level. But as soon as they got into a fight with somebody who wasn't a can, you did not see them perform. Like the Artem Florlov, whatever his name is, he spent more than half the fight running away. Literally, he wasn't resetting. He was running. So that's not a fight. That's a guy he's already defeated. You beat him before you even beat him. So again, I know that on record, some of them don't look like cans, but if you investigate it thoroughly, if you go further and say, oh, well, I see how he beat him. It wasn't much of an adversity. He didn't put up much of a fight. So again, this is a guy who doesn't have good experience, doesn't have, he hasn't been active. He definitely doesn't have UFC experience like Thurman does, which is going to go a long way. Also, Thurman is used to the protocols with cutting weight and whatnot. His opponent, by the way, is a very big guy for the division. So all that muscle weighs more than fat. So Thurman has that advantage of not having to fight the outside of the cage circumstances, because you're battling when you're a newcomer to UFC. You're going to find out the hard way that cutting weight is not as easy as it used to be. You don't have all the same things at your disposal. You don't have like a real sauna, and you can't leave the hotel room once you've been tested. So you're very limited to what you could do to cut weight. And so the easier weight cut will be for Thurman, who's already been used to this go around, and this isn't his first rodeo. So that is another advantage we have to give him, is the experience of fighting against UFC guys, and also the out-of-the-ring circumstances, which can affect a lot of fighters inside their fights. Like we've seen with just most recently the title change hands from Figueiredo to Moreno. You could tell his weight. You could see what a bad weight cut can do to a person's performance. So, but other than that, there's more things. Remember, I had to go deep into this. Now, let's talk about styles and how they make matchups perfect. Styles make matches, right? This favors, although he also has the kryptonite for Thurman, which is knockout power. He doesn't set it up properly. He doesn't have any like sneaky transitions or into using his power hand. He throws it in a very predictable way, but again, most of the time people are covered up. They're in a fetal position, and they don't see it coming, so it knocks them out because they're afraid. But this guy won't be afraid. He's on a higher level. He's used to fighting against knockout artists and whatnot. So if he's not afraid, the chances of him landing a big power shot like that clean straight on the chin is not going to be easy, because he's a guy who likes to close the distance, and then he'll wing some big shots, put you in a clinch, use his knees. He almost fights like a Muay Thai type of style. But against a guy like Thurman, that won't work. Anytime somebody gets close to trying to close the distance on Thurman, you're going to find yourself on your back. It favors him for you to close the distance. That's the worst thing you could do against a guy like Thurman, because he's got very good trips. And he's going to attempt takedown after takedown. Every time you close the distance, he's going to be working immediately, not on fighting inside the clinch with you. He's not going to turn it into a brawl. He's not going to make it a dog fight. He's going to take you down where that's his world, where he'll have a huge advantage over his opponent, Bruno Silva. So now let's talk the paths to victory as well. If anybody's getting submitted, it's not going to be Thurman. Thurman's the way better black belt jiu-jitsu specialist, submission specialist, or ground specialist than his opponent. Now, if you find out, if I'm his opponent and I keep closing the distance, whether he was successful or not. If he's successful, forget about it. There's a good chance that the fight won't even make it out of that round, and that could be the only takedown he needed, and he can submit him, because it's at a level of night and day. One is just way better than the other on the ground. Okay, so and then he'll have the dominant position, and he'll be the one working on offense, while the other guy will have to be focusing on defense if he doesn't want to get his head taken off, and he doesn't want his opponent to find too good of a position over him where he can like posture up and rain down shots where the referee will have to stop it, or put him in like a crucifix or anything like that. So he's going to be focused on defense, while Thurman will be able to focus on mostly offense, which is going to separate them on the scorecards. One will pull away. The other one, if it's early enough, may even lose by 10 to 8 rounds. So now what's going to happen is, even if he's not successful, even if he doesn't take Thurman down, Bruno Silva down, what it's going to do to Bruno is going to implement something in his head, say, I can't close the distance. If I go in there, he's going to try to take me down. I'm ineffective then. So now you're going to force a guy who's not as fluid. He's not like a Israel Adesanya. He doesn't have good footwork. He's not a boxer. You'll notice when he tries to throw from the distance, he overextends himself. He's very sloppy, very predictable. All right, so that's a huge advantage that now he's going to have. Put him in between a rock and a hard place. Do I stay? And if you're going to fight against Thurman on the outside, he's more better of a point fighter. So if this is a fight that's going to be mainly two guys striking from the outside, trying to gauge each other's distances and that type of stuff, it's going to go in the favor of Thurman. He's the kind of guy who fights to win by decision, unlike his opponent who just fights to get knockouts. So he'll pull away on the scorecards by a large margin. Unless we see Bruno Silva become a point fighter or have skills that he never showed in his most recent fights before his suspension, this fight, the majority of the different ways, the guy who has the more paths to victory, the guy who's the style favors more, is also the guy who's the better on the ground, who's going to be healthy. He hasn't fought in a long time. We can't say he's come back too soon from his knockout. He takes his career serious. He's not the kind of guy that would want to jump back in 2 months, because this career, this legacy of his livelihood, it means a lot. It matters to him. So we're going to see him at his best. He's not the kind of guy that would ever show up to a fight not 100%. So I have no reason to believe that. He looked good on the scales. This is a guy who never had to. He's a young guy. He's still getting stronger. He's still building his physique up and his confidence. The more he becomes a man, a stronger fighter, a better fighter, the more his confidence is going to be in play. And if you compare this guy's confidence where it is now to his opponent's confidence, it's a world of difference. So, 1 second. Okay, so if I'm gonna compare the two as far as confidence, this guy is coming back for the first time in a long time, and I know why he used performance enhancers. If you look at some of his losses on the regional scene, Bruno Silva has lost to some pretty low level competition. And it only seemed to have turned around for him when he lowered the level of competition and went on enhancers. Because remember, at the other organizations, there is no USADA, like Bellator's, and that's even a bigger organization. But the smaller ones especially, they're probably going to be promoting it. They're probably in favor of people using enhancers because they want to see fun shows and crazy knockouts to make their audience, whatever little audience they are, spread the word that, oh, did you see this great fight? So they're probably promoting it, unlike a real fighting organization like UFC where they prohibit it. So yeah, but I don't think it's a coincidence that when he started to develop his physique and when he looked at his best, he was and he wasn't showing any skills that were like out of the ordinary. He wasn't showing any flashy things. He wasn't using some high level capoeira or jiu-jitsu. It was just hunting for the head. That's it. He was hitting him with like a strong shot, and then while they covered up, he was giving him bigger shots, and the referee had to stop. That's the majority of his wins against all of his competition. He didn't do anything that was like, oh, I've never seen that before, or oh wow, that's very high level. Okay, so the confidence coming back on his first fight without enhancers That's a big disadvantage. Now he's not gonna, deep inside he's worried whether he's confident and pretends to be confident or not. There's gonna be some part of him inside the fight that's gonna say, man, what if I can't do as good? What if it's not gonna be as effective? What if I'm not as strong anymore? All of these things are gonna be playing in his head, because there was a point this guy didn't. You have to use your mind and think psychology. Okay, why did he need the he's not like a fat guy, he's not a skinny guy. Why did he feel he needed the extra power, the juice? Why did he need steroids? He knew his skills were not good enough. He knew that he lacked. He used it to compensate for areas that he knew he needed to compensate for, or else he would never make it anywhere far. So he knows without that stuff that he was using, he would have never gotten to this stage. He would have had more losses, less knockouts. He would have, and his skill set's not high enough. He doesn't have enough skills. He's not as good at. He's not great at anything enough to have been noticed and picked up by another. So his only way of squeaking through the UFC doors or making a name of himself is by cheating. Now he doesn't have that anymore. He can't. So he's back to that guy who nobody would have looked at. Nobody would have picked up. So we got to take advantage of that. He's a favorite over a guy who's a real, actual UFC level fighter. He's not the highest level, but this is a guy who he separates himself from the average fighter. You can see it in his in his body work, in his resume. He separates himself from the lower tier region guys. So he was destined for it, especially being as young as he is. He's very talented. He's very, he's dangerous on the ground. He's not a complete, it didn't look anybody. Andrew Sanchez is one of the greatest boxers in that division. He's got very good fluid boxing. He uses the fundamentals. He sets everything up. He's a very good boxer, Sanchez. So, and that's how he wins all his fights. So there was no shame you can't compare Andrew Sanchez on the feet to this guy, night and day. And then especially with the confidence in effect, when you factor that stuff in as well with the confidence, that's not nowhere near the same. All right, guys, so you have my reasons. Win, lose, or draw, the smarter bet, the better value, and for every reason possible. I gave you more reasons than that. Wellington Thurman is the right pick. Again, I don't know. It may not always be the right one as far as who wins, but I guarantee if you watch my show, you'll always get the smarter bet. And usually smarter bets are what prevails. What in the long run you can win, and you can show a track record of having so many wins like I did. My accuracy after a while, if you ever go back to just my last 12 events and do my average, my right to wrong accuracy rate never been seen before. I guarantee you've never heard of anybody close to it. It would be, you would think it's fake. I challenge you, go do it. Go look at my circle picks, or go look at my bet slips. Even better is my bet, because bet slips are what shows what I really think. Because sometimes the circle picks, I give you my picks on people I wouldn't want to pick, because you have to see you're paying for my picks. You're not paying for who I bet on only. So if you're in the higher tiers, you'll see that who I actually pick to bet on, as opposed to just all my picks. But I make it known by giving you colors. I use red for high risk, so if it's a high risk pick, you'll most likely not see it on my bet slip. So they kind of coincide. But so you can, if you're on my Patreon, you can actually see who I'm putting money on, as opposed to just picking to win, which is usually the same. Very hardly do I ever skip fights. I have rules where I recommend that you don't use women's MMA fights, and other rules that I don't want to get into, but besides the rules that I made that help us make sure that we have a better profitable night in the long run, that these rules will save us a lot of money. But besides that, I pretty much I bet on every fight that is not a super dangerous fight where we got two guys who are untrustworthy, or they don't have good IQ, or they don't have good cardio, or if they get robbed. Very few times that I'll say, oh, this guy's on my folder of people who get robbed, so we're not picking him, but he should win. So I don't want to pick his opponent, but I won't pick him either, because it's not just that this world. If you want to make it successfully in this era of betting, you can't just pick the better fighter. it comes down to politics. It comes down to a lot of things that you got to incorporate, outside the ring. The is he a debut fighter? Is he still accustomed to it? There's too many things you got to take into consideration other than just who's the better fighter. If you're only going with who's the better fighter every time, you're going to be in for a surprise many times. You're going to see guys that are on the opposite, like with the Bozer fight. I knew Bozer would win. I had Bozer winning. They robbed him. From what I heard, he got robbed. But we stayed away from him because I knew that he's a guy who gets robbed a lot. So, that saved us recently. Who else was it? I can't remember. But this comes in handy, guys. But thank you. Please don't forget to hit the like, hit the subscribe if you haven't already, hit the bell notifications and the reminders. And I'm breaking it down, like all the stuff about height and the weight. Most of it you'll notice when you're on the other channels who are giving you predictions, 90% of their breakdown is focused on the stuff that you can read yourself on Tapology or SureDog. He's out of this camp. He's this tall. He's got this much reach. I just give you my pick and the stuff that you can never read about, the styles, the stuff that I told you about, what's going to happen when he closes the distance. Like the perfect example, do you remember in my Brandon Allen versus Strickland fight, or the Darush fight, when people were going against me, I even wrote out a long paragraph. It's still saved in the comment section. I explained to you the reason why I picked Strickland as an underdog over Brandon Allen is because every time Allen closes the distance to try to take him down, Strickland's movement and boxing is going to be so good that he's going to punish him for trying to close the distance. Because when you're closing the distance, you're not being defensive. It's the only time where you can't use your hands to cover up. So he's going to make him pay for it severely. And it's going to get to the point where Brandon Allen will get too either battered and beat up, where he'll stop trying to shoot in, and then he'll have to fight in Strickland's world where he'll be at a disadvantage. And we saw Justin Ayala, I do the same thing for this fight. I do that for every fight. I compare them fighting styles, how they come together, and what's going to happen when they clash. Who's going to be the one that overcomes the adversity that one of them is bringing. So they're both going to bring some type of adversity, right? After they bring that, this is what's going to happen. Then the effect and reaction to that will be this. So I keep spinning the wheels until I find out, okay, so this is what's going to end up happening. Nobody, I can guarantee you, else can do that equation, that filling out, envisioning the next step and the next step, if they've never fought or they didn't train for if they didn't study the art of fighting. If you're just like, a lot of people admit to not doing it, and some people pretend like they could do it, but you'll notice the difference. Nobody else that I know of, at least not yet. I gave credit to James Cross, but he doesn't have his own channel. And we've seen I'm way more accurate than him on events. He picked Gina Mazzani and Jiri Prochazka to lose. Jiri to lose against Dominic Reyes. So that just goes to show that he's a fighter and but he doesn't know other fighters because he's never looked study. I have that advantage over. Again, I have the advantage that he has with the other advantages that he lacks. So I kind of combined the best of both worlds. I have the same MMA knowledge as a hardcore fan, but then I also have the knowledge of a fighter who, if you're just a hardcore fan, if you don't have the fight IQ, it won't be enough to be able to. That's why my accuracy separates me from everybody else. In case you're wondering how I'm lucky, people are still calling it luck, believe it or not. I went 8 straight events of profit. I have a window I can show you from in 8 events of more than 3 times in UFC, with robberies, with changing opponents, with cheating judges. I still went 8 events, making 3 times or more my customers' money. If you look back at the Patreon, we had a record. That was my record. I'm trying to beat it because every now and then, like, it'll be that one event where we broke even or had some small losses. Nobody's perfect. You're always going to have that one event every now and then. But I've gone on some. You can't call somebody lucky. My first day on being tracked by MMA betting, I had 45 units. And I bet on the whole card. I gave him 7 or 8 picks out of 9. I left 1 out. I had 44 units profit, 170% ROI. Not even close. Nobody has ever even came close to that. So it's not, again, you can keep calling it lucky, but time will keep telling that I'm different than everybody else doing this show. So I hope this pick helps you. The win, loser, draw, smarter bet. is Wellington Thurman. And his opponent, I explained to you that eventually he'll start to get desperate. He won't be able to close the distance without paying for it. So after a while, he'll start to just give up on trying to fight where he's comfortable, which is in the clinch. Because you can't go into the... If you try to clinch up with a guy like Thurman, he's not going to stay there with you. He's not going to keep you there. He's going to be doing everything he can to get you to the ground. And he's got good trips. He's got good takedowns. So if you tried it, if you didn't do your homework, and you tried it and learned the hard way, the second... That's either going to cost him the fight. It's either going to be over after learning the... before he can even learn the hard way. It'll be a mistake. They call it a game of inches. Whoever makes the first mistake, usually sometimes at the higher levels, they pay for it by losing. So we could see Thurman just finish him and put him away because of that mistake. But if he doesn't put him away, if the rounds reset or he finds a way to get back up, I guarantee you he's going to stop trying to close the distance and get that. And therefore, he won't be able to plant that big, heavy shot. Thurman's not a guy who's going to ball up and cover up and let him just swing at him. So the rightful favorite, the guy who should be the favorite, a moderate favorite, should be like a minus 200, minus 300 favorite, is Wellington Thurman. You got my pick. Thank you. I'll see you on the next video. Good luck.